Imagine living in the year 1900. Someone tells you that one day people will fly across oceans in just a few hours. Cars will drive themselves. A message will reach the other side of the world in less than a second. And rockets, you'd probably smile and think, that's impossible. But today, those ideas are simply part of everyday life. History has a funny way of turning impossible ideas into ordinary ones. Now, here's something even more interesting. Many of those future technologies seem to point back to one person, Elon Musk. Reusable rockets, electric cars, satellite internet, even brain-computer interfaces, different fields, all touched by the exact same mind. Whether you admire him or disagree with him, there's one question that's hard to ignore. How does one person keep working across so many completely different fields? Is it simply because he's unusually intelligent? Probably not. After all, the world is full of brilliant people who never build anything on that scale. The real difference seems to lie somewhere else. Not in how much he knows, but in how he approaches a problem before trying to solve it. Some people call it a different mental operating system, running quietly underneath every decision. Picture a computer running two different programs, side by side, on the exact same hardware. One program runs slowly, checking every small step the normal, familiar way. The other runs faster, questioning steps most programs simply accept without checking them at all. Same basic hardware, completely different results over time because of how each one operates. And that's exactly what we're going to explore today. Not just what Elon Musk builds, but how he thinks. The person behind this way of thinking is Elon Musk. You've probably heard his name before. Most people know him through Tesla and SpaceX. Others know him because of Starlink or Neuralink. Different industries, different technologies. Yet somehow, the same person keeps showing up. But here's the more interesting question. What if his biggest advantage was never raw intelligence at all? What if it's simply the speed at which he learns new things? That brings us to an idea worth remembering: learning velocity. Not being the smartest person already in the room on day one. Simply learning faster than the problem itself is changing, day by day, week by week. Most industries move at a certain natural speed, as new information slowly arrives over time. Someone with high learning velocity absorbs that same information much faster than everyone around them. By the time competitors fully understand a problem, this kind of person has already moved past it. Think about how most industries usually work, quietly, over long stretches of time. A company learns something. Slowly, that knowledge spreads to competitors, over months, or even years. Everyone eventually catches up, more or less, at roughly the same slow, predictable pace. High learning velocity breaks this pattern completely, in a way most competitors don't expect at all. Instead of slowly catching up to the industry's pace, this person quietly sets a faster pace entirely. By the time others learn lesson 1, this person has already learned lessons 2, 3, and 4. Over time, that gap becomes incredibly difficult to close. It isn't magic, it's simply the result of learning faster, again and again. So where does that learning speed come from? To answer that, we have to go back to the beginning. It didn't start with rockets. It started with a child who couldn't stop reading. As a child growing up in South Africa, Musk was endlessly, restlessly curious about almost everything. He read constantly, across many completely unrelated fields, without sticking to just one subject: physics, economics, psychology, science fiction, history, all mixed together inside one curious, growing mind. This habit built something useful, something we can call mental models. A mental model is simply a way of looking at how something works. Physics helps you understand what's possible. Economics helps you understand what's worth building. Many of us end up relying on just one model from one field, and then use only that model forever. An engineer sees every problem through engineering eyes. An economist sees it only through economic eyes. That single lens works fine, most days, for fairly ordinary, familiar problems. But truly strange, complicated problems rarely fit neatly inside just one single field. Musk's real advantage seems to come from combining several models, borrowed from very different fields. Physics helps explain what's physically possible. Economics asks whether it's financially realistic. Psychology asks how people are likely to respond. Combine all three, and you see a problem far more completely than someone using just one lens. This is also where questioning comes in. As a habit, almost automatically, without much effort. Most people accept an assumption quietly, simply because everyone around them already accepts it too. That's just how this industry works. That's just the standard price for materials like these. Someone using multiple mental models tends to question that assumption almost immediately, out of pure habit. Not because they're trying to be difficult, simply because another lens may reveal a different answer. Simply because a different lens often reveals a completely different possible answer. Let's imagine this in a simple, everyday example, away from rockets or factories completely. Say you're trying to decide whether to change careers. At some point later in your life, using only an economic lens, you might focus entirely on salary and nothing else at all. Using only an emotional lens, you might focus entirely on excitement and ignore practical questions completely. Combine both lenses, and a clearer picture slowly starts to form in front of you. Does this path pay reasonably well? And does it also genuinely interest you over the long run? Neither lens alone gives you the full picture. Together, they give you something far more complete. This is exactly the same habit Musk applies, at a much larger, more complicated scale. Physics tells him what's physically possible. Economics tells him what's financially realistic to actually build. Psychology tells him how people will likely respond once the product finally reaches them. Left on our own, we usually fall back on the lens we know best. An engineer defaults to physics. A business person defaults to economics. A marketer defaults to psychology. Learning to deliberately borrow a second, unfamiliar lens takes real, conscious effort, especially at first. It rarely feels natural in the beginning. It has to be practiced, again and again, on purpose. Over time, though, switching between models starts to feel less like effort and more like a simple habit. By the time Musk reached adulthood, this habit had already quietly shaped how he approached everything new. A new industry wasn't something to simply study, the way everyone before him had studied it. It was something to break apart completely and rebuild, using whichever combination of models fit best. This is a very different starting point than most people bring to a brand new field. Most newcomers ask, "How has this always been done?" and then quietly learn to do the same. Musk's habit asks something different from the very first day. Why has it always been done this way? So what does this way of thinking look like in the real world? One decision in the rocket industry tells the story perfectly. Most people, entering the rocket industry, ask a fairly obvious, ordinary question first. How can we buy rockets more cheaply than everyone else currently does? Musk asked a very different question instead, using a completely different lens. What raw materials is a rocket actually made from? And why do those materials cost so much? Break the cost down to simple metal and simple parts, and the price often looks completely different. The real limit wasn't the materials themselves. It was an old assumption nobody had properly questioned. That same way of thinking appears again in a simple 5-step process Musk often talks about. Step 1. Question the requirement itself. Is this rule even necessary, or just assumed to be? Step 2. Delete anything unnecessary completely, rather than trying to improve something that shouldn't exist at all. Step 3. Simplify whatever remains, making it as clean and basic as it can possibly be. Step 4. Speed up the process, once it's already simple and clearly necessary. Step 5, and only step 5, automate it, so it runs smoothly, without constant human effort. Notice that automation comes last, not first, in this whole 5-step process. Most people want to automate immediately, before ever properly questioning what they're actually automating. Automating a bad, unnecessary process just makes a bad process run faster, not better. There's another habit that's easy to overlook. Musk is known for spending time on the factory floor instead of relying only on reports. He wants to see the real bottleneck with his own eyes, not through someone else's summary. A report can hide a slow, hidden bottleneck. Standing on the floor rarely can. Here's how that process might look in everyday work. Imagine a small, ordinary example. A weekly report your team spends hours preparing, every single week. Step 1 asks, does this report even need to exist, in its current form, at all? Maybe the honest answer is no. Maybe nobody actually reads half of it carefully anymore. Step 2 says, delete the unnecessary parts completely, instead of just polishing something that shouldn't exist. Step 3 says, simplify whatever genuinely remains, cutting it down to its clearest, most basic form. Step 4 says, speed up the process of creating it, now that it's finally simple and necessary. Only after all of that does step 5 arrive. Automate the simple, necessary process that's left. Most teams instinctively jump straight to automating the original, complicated report, skipping the first 4 steps entirely. They end up with a fast, efficient system, quietly producing something that never needed to exist in the first place. That's why the order matters. Question first. Remove what's unnecessary. Simplify. Speed it up. Automate only when everything else is already working. Whether the system is tiny or enormous, the underlying 5 steps rarely change at all. That simplicity is part of why the method spreads so easily, once someone actually tries it honestly. But over time, this way of thinking led Musk to an even bigger realization. Not a car, not a rocket. Something quieter and far more powerful than either one. For a long time, the goal seemed simple: build a better car or a better rocket. But a strange pattern kept showing up, again and again, across different projects. The real limit was rarely the final product itself, sitting finished at the very end. The real limit was the process used to build that product, sitting quietly underneath everything else. The machine that builds the machine. If a factory can only make 1 part per day, it doesn't matter how brilliant the design is. The whole system moves at the speed of its slowest single step, no faster than that. This slowest step has a simple name: the bottleneck. Musk began treating the factory itself as the real object of innovation, not just the product coming out of it. Building a great car matters. Building the machine that builds thousands of great cars, quickly, matters even more. This shift, from product to process, is much less visible from the outside, most of the time. People notice a sleek new car. They rarely notice the redesigned assembly line quietly behind it. But that quiet, hidden redesign is often where the deepest, most lasting advantage actually lives. Find the bottleneck, fix the bottleneck, then find the next one, patiently, and fix that one too. This becomes a repeating cycle, applied again and again, across every single project he touches. Learning velocity, applied specifically to bottlenecks, rather than randomly across an entire system. That focus, quiet and unexciting, is the real turning point hiding inside this whole story. It also changes the way we think about innovation. Most people picture innovation as a shiny new product, unveiled dramatically on a big stage. This kind of innovation is quieter and much less visible most of the time. Sometimes, it looks like a redesigned machine hidden inside a factory. Other times, it's simply one bottleneck being removed after another. That's why competitors often struggle to copy this advantage. They can copy the product. What they can't easily copy is the process behind it. They see the finished car or the finished rocket and completely miss the process quietly built underneath it. This is exactly why copying the final product rarely closes the real gap between companies. The visible product is only the surface. The real advantage sits underneath it, mostly hidden from view. So what if you're not building rockets or running a factory? Can this way of thinking still help? I think it can. You don't need to be the smartest person in any room you ever walk into. You need to question your own assumptions faster than the room around you is changing. Here are 3 simple lessons, pulled directly from this way of thinking. First, build mental models from more than one field, instead of relying on just one. If you only think like an engineer, or only like a marketer, borrow a second lens deliberately. Read outside your usual field. Some of the best ideas come from connecting worlds that rarely meet. Second, question every assumed requirement before quietly accepting it as simply true. Ask yourself, is this rule actually necessary? Or is it simply something everyone assumes, without checking? Try the 5-step method yourself. Question it, delete it, simplify it, speed it up, then automate it. The order matters. Otherwise, you may end up making a flawed system run faster instead of making it better. Third, look for your own bottleneck before trying to improve everything else around it. What is the one slowest step in your own daily work, quietly limiting everything else? Fixing that one slow step often helps more than improving 10 other steps combined. Question your models, question your assumptions. Find your bottleneck first. Those are the 3 real lessons. Here's a simple way to put these ideas into practice. Pick one problem you're currently facing, in work or in your own personal life. Which single mental model are you currently using to think about it, without even noticing? Now, deliberately borrow a second one. What would an economist say? What would a psychologist say? Next, list the requirements you're simply assuming are fixed and unchangeable, without ever really testing them. Pick one and honestly ask, is this actually necessary, or just familiar and rarely questioned? Finally, look at your own daily process, honestly, and find its slowest, most limiting single step. Fix that one step first, before spending more energy improving anything else around it. Small habits like these gradually change the way you think. You don't need rockets, factories, or millions of dollars to start. You only need the willingness to question what you've always accepted. That willingness, practiced daily, is available to absolutely anyone, starting today. Before we finish, there's one final idea that brings everything together. Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, Starlink. From the outside, these look like 4 separate, unrelated companies. Musk seems to see them differently, more like organs working together inside one single living body. A heart, lungs, a brain. Each is different, but each supports the exact same larger system. Knowledge learned at SpaceX about materials or manufacturing often quietly reappears later inside Tesla's own factories. A lesson learned building rockets can end up shaping how an electric car gets built too. This is what people mean by an ecosystem, instead of simply a scattered collection of separate businesses. Each part strengthens the others, instead of existing completely alone, disconnected from everything nearby. Think of a body again, for a moment, to make this idea feel more concrete. A heart alone can't keep a body alive. Neither can lungs alone, or a brain alone. Together, as one connected ecosystem, they support something none of them could sustain by themselves. Musk's companies seem to work under this same quiet logic, even though they look separate from outside. Battery knowledge from Tesla likely shapes decisions at SpaceX. Manufacturing lessons likely travel in both directions. This kind of ecosystem thinking is rare, mostly because it requires holding several fields in your mind together. Most founders focus on making one company successful. Musk seems to focus on how several companies can strengthen one another. It requires holding several different fields in your mind at the same time and asking how they connect. In the end, maybe the clearest way to describe this whole mindset is quite simple. Musk isn't only solving problems the way most other people usually do. He's questioning reality itself, one quiet assumption at a time, refusing to accept things simply because they're familiar. Every accepted rule becomes an idea worth testing. Every obstacle becomes a design problem, worth solving. Let's bring everything together. Musk's advantage wasn't just intelligence. It was the habit of questioning assumptions, learning quickly, and improving systems instead of just products. That's the pattern connecting everything we've talked about today. Before we go, let's remember today's key words. One more time, slowly. Model. A mental framework used to understand how something actually works. Assume. To accept something as true without ever really checking it first. Bottleneck. The slowest part of a system, quietly limiting everything else inside it. Velocity. The speed at which you learn and adjust and improve over time. Ecosystem. A group of parts that support and strengthen each other. Automate. To make a process run by itself, without constant human effort. Question. To challenge something honestly, instead of quietly, simply accepting it. Model, assume, bottleneck, velocity. Ecosystem, automate. Question. The next time you run into a problem, don't rush to find a better answer. Spend a moment looking at the question itself. Sometimes the biggest breakthrough comes from asking a question that everyone else stopped asking a long time ago. If this story made you look at problems a little differently, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a 1 in the comments if you want more stories like this. There are many more interesting minds and ideas we can explore together in future videos.